You are listening to the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks.
Where you go, Auburn fans? Welcome to No Huddle, your source for Auburn football news and discussion. Part of the E2C Network. I'm AJ Richardson. Auburn just won its second game. I keep saying 1-0 everywhere just because that's Harson's new phrase, but we're actually 2-0. Good thing for Auburn going into this next week against Penn State. But Auburn got its second win against Alabama State in the 2021 season. It was good to see the students show up early for 11 o'clock kickoff. The fans were into it. The players, however, at the beginning struggled to get into it, but they slowly got there. I've also brought along, and if you remember from just a couple of years ago, I had plenty of podcasts with this guy because he was my co-host, Ben King. But I brought him along to talk about this Alabama State game since Jared wasn't able to for this game. Ben King, how you doing, buddy?
AJ, I am great, sir. Thanks for having me back. Feel bad for Jared not being able to kind of cover this just absolute slaughter. One note about this, I was at the game, as were you, and I have now been at Jordan-Hare for the last 3 shutouts.
What?
So I guess I know how to pick them. And man, when the team lined up, when Alabama State lined up for that field goal, I was like, no, I want a shutout. And then we batted it down, returned it for a touchdown. I was just losing it.
Yeah.
So this is a great game to kind of review and preview when we get over to the Penn State game. So happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you back. Before we dive it too deep into this Alabama State game, I did because I just want to hear your thoughts, Ben, from your perspective. Give me your thoughts about this Auburn team this year. New coaching staff under Brian Harsin, offensive coordinator under Mike Bobo, and I guess Brian Harsin as well. But even Derek Mason as defensive coordinator, and then just kind of give you any general thoughts that you want about this Auburn team.
Yeah, well, so this is probably the lowest expectations I've ever had going into a season. So I didn't even rank Auburn in my top 25. I don't think anyone did. I had us right about 29, which I think is where the AP poll landed us, which I was pretty happy to see. If Gus had still been here and we had returned all of the talent that left after his dismissal last season, I would have said this is a top 10 team, no doubt. Taking back a little Gus saying. But with him leaving and with the receiving core leaving and with some talented defensive players leaving, I wasn't sure what to expect here. And honestly, Brian Harsin wasn't on my top 10 list of coaches to hire at Auburn.
Not many people had Brian Harsin on top 10.
Hats off to Alan Green for finding a gem. Had not paid much attention to Boise State in the past decade. And Brian Harsin, I love his work ethic. And it's definitely shown with a team that has now come out and offensively performed, even if it's not necessarily right out of the gate. I love the ability for us to come out of halftime and make adjustments and actually execute on those. That's something that we have not seen in a very long time at Auburn. And the fact that he's able to get this team performing consistently and not letting off the gas, I really appreciate that. And we've been able to have 2 teams now where we played really nobodies, and that's fine, but have put up some very statistically relevant numbers to where we are now the number 1 team offensive scoring, number 1 team yards per play, number 1 team yards per rush, number 3 team in rushing yards, number 1 in defensive scoring, number 1 in allowed rushing yards, number 1 in allowed yards per play. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen an Auburn team just come out and statistically romp like this, except when I play NCAA football on the Xbox. So, it's really fun to be able to see an Auburn team come out and just perform the way that they have. And then for the receiving core, the young players that they are to really step up, for Tank Bigsby to be all that we saw him last year and more. And then Jarquez Hunter just come out of the rough as a true freshman and just destroy rushing the football. This is an exciting team. And like I said, no expectations. I thought best of we were going to be 7-5 this year, but I'm starting to believe, man. And it's tough because when you start to believe, it just sets you up for disappointment. But I feel like Brian Harsin and the coaching staff know what they're doing, and they are preparing this team well. And I'm really excited to see next week when we go on the road, because Gus Malzahn was never good at road games, and he never had the team prepared for those. And so this will really show a lot of what has changed when we have a road game in a tough environment. So I'm really excited to see that.
Yeah. I don't know about never. He always had him ready at Arkansas, but
That was the only one. That was the game he circled. And then we almost lost to Arkansas last year. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. But I mean, I think we've turned a corner and gone into a new chapter under Brian Harsin. And I'm loving, like you are, the changes, the ways that it seems like Harsin and his staff have this team dialed in, even for these smaller games, which I mean, even under Gus Malzahn, it felt like sometimes those games you're kind of hoping, even at halftime, like, oh crap, it's close, like it's a field goal or two scores away from something potentially bad happening. And then usually the second half under Gus Malzahn, we run away with it. But honestly, like, it took maybe a little bit longer than I expected in this Alabama State game to kind of propel us into, like, okay, yeah, we got this. We're not going to have to worry about this game against Alabama State. But I mean, our first two drives ended in just field goals. And I mean, I'm just thinking back even last year under Gus, we seemed to get to the red zone and end in a field goal. And you're like, that's against the hard competition, you're not going to win a lot of football games doing that. So it was good, after a little bit, getting us going to score more touchdowns. And then ultimately, I mean, we had an incredible third quarter. I think it was the highest scoring third quarter in Auburn history, where we scored 35 points. So, I mean, that's some good halftime adjustments by Harsin and his staff to get us going again, and just say, we're putting the pedal down to the metal, and then we're going hard.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so many records were set in this game or were kind of tied in this game. So what is this, the first time that we've beaten teams by 60 plus since like 1932? The longest touchdown run was in this game.
Yeah. Jarquez Hunter, baby.
The highest scoring third quarter is in this game. Just so many awesome things to actually be able to witness in person. I was really happy to be there.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, coming to the game, maybe if you're watching on TV, it wasn't as exciting, but definitely in the stadium, like, there were so many big plays. And I'm sure watching on TV, it was exciting, because anytime you have a 94-yard run where you get a punt or a kick block or punt block, any of those, I feel like it just makes the game that much more fun. I'm personally a big fan of special teams, but maybe I'm just partial to that.
Well, I feel like special teams hasn't been good for a long time. And like, they performed incredibly well. Besides, I'd say the halftime, like, onside kick.
Oh yeah,
Alabama State had, that may have been one of the bad ones. But besides that, like, special teams kept us really in the game early on, and they performed incredibly well holistically.
Yeah, and even that kickoff, I mean, ultimately didn't result for any points for Alabama State. But
defense,
it was, I mean, I don't know how you expect that. And also, I think it was pretty much perfectly executed. Like,
it was.
You couldn't have, it's kind of like it reminds me of like a pop-up just in baseball between like an infielder and outfielder. Like, sometimes it just drops and it's perfectly put, but like, you can't necessarily plan on that every time being consistent. So it was just, the right time, right moment. Auburn wasn't necessarily ready for it, and it just happened. But I think overall, special teams just kicked butt this game, besides that one play.
For sure.
But let's jump into kind of, things we learned just overall from this Auburn team against Alabama State. Ben, what are some of the things you kind of learned from this game that you think will be continued on throughout the rest of the season?
Yeah, so I'd say a tenacity of the running game is huge. I think the passing game needs to be picked up a little bit sooner rather than later. Bo is still a little bit challenged, and he made some good decisions and some bad decisions. Like there was a third down where he definitely should have run for it, and he tried to pass and it went in the dirt.
Right.
So not going to hate on Bo too much, but definitely seeing some development there, which is good. He seems to be a lot more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
That may be part because of the line and also because of the competition, but I'm happy to see that. And really, the biggest things that I think is the special teams and defensive performances. Because defense is lights out and special teams was lights out. So absolutely love to see that. They say defenses win championships, but you got to be able to score.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can score on the ground very easily. I think our defense is stout.
Yeah, I was gonna say a thing I learned is defense. I personally wasn't expecting a shutout this game. I was expecting Alabama State. I'd heard they have a really good running back. Their passing game is pretty good. Like them be able to move the ball, at least get some points. But Auburn's defense said, "Not in my house, not today." And then special teams coming up clutch with that block kick that would have resulted in 3 points and ended that shutout. So there were lots of good things on both defense, special teams. Offense is definitely moving in the right direction, but there's things like I've noticed early on, and maybe it's just a morning game. Maybe it's just the chemistry kind of, still needing to be developed between particularly Bo Nix and the wide receivers. But, we saw a good bit of that, honestly, in that first game where Bo went 20 for 22. This game, not as great, where I think he was 9 of 17, 108 yards, only 2 touchdowns compared to, last week. Not as good of a performance. I mean, it got the job done, obviously, but I think Auburn's offense, if you have that kind of slow start against a good team, you're going to be playing from behind pretty quickly. So against big teams, like coming up against Penn State, you can't have that happen. So offense has got to get on the right page from minute 1 of the game.
Yep, absolutely agree.
All right, let's kind of talk high level, offense. What did you think of Auburn's offense this game? And what are some of the things that you think maybe even Bo can do to improve this offense going forward?
Yeah, I really liked the offense in the second half. So first half, I'll kind of go through. Look, Bo needs to make better decisions. I guess that's kind of where it starts. And then our receivers, when they are wide open and Bo makes a good decision, even if he doesn't put it on the money, they have to be able to catch it.
Mm-hmm.
We had so many drop passes early on in this game. It was kind of infuriating, especially since they were wide open touchdown passes that should have been caught and hauled in and scored on. So you can't put all that on Bo. He delivered passes where he needed to a lot of times, and they were, I don't even know what the stats are as far as drops are, but it has to be half of his misses were drops.
I know in the first half, I'd already kind of thought through at least 4.
Yeah.
So at least 4 in the first half. I kind of lost track in the second half, but say 4. I mean, that's, if he completes 4, then he's 13 of 17.
Yep.
That's not bad. I mean, that's
much better than how it looks on paper.
Because right now it looks like he's just a little over, half of his passes he completes. But I think some of that is on the wide receivers dropping the ball.
Absolutely, it is. And this receiving core is young. So, they're going to continue to get better. They're going to continue to learn. But right now, that's, I'd say, the biggest question mark as far as the offense goes. Running game, man, awesome. Like the line is finally coming together. The way they were able to open up holes to run through was awesome. Whether we go, through the seams or around the sides, the running game was on point. It didn't matter who was carrying the ball either, which was great.
Yeah. Like even guys like Sean Jackson, number 44, Jordan Ingram got some runs.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're thinking, that's really cool. Like we're going really like that's 4th and 5th level of running backs behind Tank, Jarquez, and Shivers. And so I'm honestly, one of the things, and this is kind of coming back to our discussion at the beginning of what are we liking from this Harsin era, is you're seeing a lot of good depth building. And going forward, I think we only have Tank for one more year after this. And so what is the next, iteration of this running back room? I think it's Jarquez. and guys like Sean Jackson and anybody else that we end up picking up on the recruiting trail. So I think there's a lot of good things from this running back group that I think is a very good start. And one of those particular ones that I think is something that I think it can definitely be utilized a lot is passing out of the backfield to running back. I mean, there's a lot of good places where, Tank or Jarquez or even Shivers can get out on a wheel route or something and make some big plays, because all those guys are top 3 running backs. You give them some open space, they're going to make some crazy good plays. So that's something that I want to see a little bit more of, is those passes out of the backfield, just to keep the offense, keep the defense a little honest.
Yeah, and you think about, the coaching changes. Keeping Cadillac Williams was one of the best decisions, and he should be one of the highest paid, offensive coaches in the country, just because of the talent he's able to bring in and the way he's able to develop these running backs.
Yeah, for real.
So, I didn't know who Jarquez Hunter was until this season, and he has exploded onto the map. So,
no doubt. No doubt.
It's pretty awesome to see the talent that we have at running back when we're able to go, 5 deep in this game and just put on a show.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Also, let's talk about wide receivers. We've kind of hit on them. They've been a little bit inconsistent, dropping a lot of passes. But I think one of the things that I got from this game was we were starting to develop that long ball or even the fade routes like Demetrius Robertson. And that's something I think was kind of lacking from even the first game, is who's going to be our deep ball threat. And I think we're starting to get that. I think Shedrick Jackson is kind of coming to the top of the list. Demetrius Robertson is coming to the top of that list. And so I know there's guys kind of bubbling up like that in the wide receiver room. Any other kind of thoughts about this wide receiver group? And I'm going to also lump in tight ends as well, since we only had one pass from to Schinker for 8 yards this game. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really like Kobe Hudson too. I think he did a great job in the game. It's weird because we don't have a go-to wide receiver.
Yeah.
And so I'm really trying to figure out who that is. I feel like as far as someone who can, be your 3rd and 5, who do you pass it to? Demetrius Robertson is probably the guy right now.
Mm-hmm.
Shedrick Jackson, I love Shedrick and his history being Bo Jackson's nephew. And, the fact that he's able to step up and be a solid player is really great. So I love him to be able to be that guy too. But, the kind of players that we have is kind of cool. The legacy of some of the wide receivers.
Even Kalen Newton.
I really wanted Kalen Newton to get that touchdown, man.
He had it for sure, a touchdown. That was one of the ones I was like, dang it, dude, you were so open. He just got too excited, I think.
Yep, for sure. So I think wide receiver is still kind of a question mark for me, but some of the displays that we've seen in the first 2 games has made me really happy.
Yeah.
And it was one of the areas that I was kind of most worried about, and I don't feel as worried about it now. Especially TJ Finley, his one pass. Who did that go to?
Malcolm Johnson Jr.
That was 1 fantastic pass, 2 fantastic catch.
Yes.
So even the guys in 3rd, 4th string are really talented.
Yeah.
And so love to see that.
And I was noting not only was TJ Finley's ball just perfectly thrown, but Malcolm Johnson came down with that so well. And that's with somebody right on your back, right there, ready to tip the ball or, tackle you. And Malcolm Johnson Jr. didn't care. He was going to catch the ball either way. So it's cool to see guys that are a little bit lower on the depth chart that aren't necessarily starters are, again, developing into guys that I think Malcolm Johnson, maybe even in this season, even could have some really big impacts for Auburn.
Hey Auburn fans, I want to take a quick timeout from this episode to bring your attention to something very special. Here at the E2C Network, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best content for Auburn fans out there. And best of all, it's free to you. But just because it's free doesn't mean there aren't costs, especially when you have a library of hundreds of podcasts, videos, blogs, and more. Many of you have reached out and asked how you can support this network in the past. Well, now I have your answer. It's called the E2C Network Booster Club over at patreon.com/E2C Network. There you'll find a membership monthly reward system where you can sign up for as little as $1 and get different perks at different tiers. Some of those perks include things such as apparel, eligibility to join us on future podcasts, recognition as an E2C Network booster, exclusive communications, and bonus content that is available nowhere else. If you love this network and want to help us keep producing podcasts like this one, please head on over to patreon.com/E2C Network to join the E2C Network Booster Club. You can also get there by going to our website, e2cnetwork.com/support. Whether you decide to join or not, we are still so appreciative that you would support us by just listening and being here, because each and every one of you is part of our E2C Network family. Well, that's it. Timeout's over. Let's get back into the episode.
I do want to talk about offensive line, because offensive line was, pretty good, honestly, the first game. We had no pressures. This game, I feel like we got beat a couple of times. And offensive line knew it. And what did they end up doing? They went to their old habits of holding. And I think we had at least 2 holding calls, maybe 3 in the game, where offensive linemen were they held. And a couple of those were really big plays. I think Tank got called back. I think I calculated in my head, it was over 30 yards of runs just because somebody held. And that just sucks. Like, that's demoralizing if you're running back. But that's something that you can clean up. And that's discipline, not holding on too long. So the other kind of news, Brandon Council was injured. I don't think I've heard anything. Ben, have you heard anything about Brandon Council?
I have not, but was not happy to see that.
Yeah. I mean, a starting offensive lineman going down on a team that's trying to build this unity on offensive line, not a good sign. Hopefully we hear some good news that he's on the mend and ready to come back. But it sounds like also kind of in this offseason, they've been rotating a lot of offensive linemen in and out, just knowing that odds are somebody's going to get injured, nicked up. And this is, kind of the nature of offensive line in the SEC. So, I mean, honestly, after he got out, I didn't see a huge drop off. Maybe I wasn't looking close enough, but I didn't see a huge drop off, which I think is a good thing from this offensive line.
True.
And kind of moving forward.
I think it was a little late in the game too, which I think is kind of why we didn't see a drop off. And it's really going to matter going forward. I think last season when we lost an offensive lineman early on, that was when, might have been in the Georgia game. Mm-hmm. That was when we started going a little bit downhill. Really happy to see some of the growth there. I think the offensive line did very well for most of the game, besides a couple penalties. And honestly, like, we learned from 2019 facing LSU, like, commit them if you got them, like, because they're not going to get called most of the time.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I hate getting called on it, but if they're allowing it, why not? So, it's kind of like
a whistle.
Yeah, play what the ref's calling you for. So they're not calling it. Do it. Let's also kind of transition over. We talked to Phil a good bit about offense and where offense is headed. Mostly good things, but definitely some stuff to grow on, especially with wide receivers and Bo settling in earlier in the game. But let's talk about defense. This is again, I think, some good stuff from our defense. I mean, I didn't have huge question marks coming into this year just because our defense of the amount of veterans that we have on our defense is really good. And that alone made me feel good. But then as we started to lose some defensive linemen, some questions started popping up. I don't think I have as many question marks, except, and I'm going to put this one out here, I think the defensive line or even defensive front 7 kind of getting pressure on the quarterback, because I feel like we should have gotten to Alabama State's quarterback a little bit more than we did. There was a couple of times we got close, but if we're struggling against Alabama State, I hope we're able to move and get to the quarterback quickly against other teams. But I think that's something for us to work towards, is getting pressure on the quarterback.
And it's weird in this game. We weren't rushing a ton. I think it was probably only 4 most of the time.
Yeah.
Had a couple of sacks, which was great. I know TD Moultrie got one, so I was happy to see that. We ran a lot of zone in this game too, which I thought was kind of weird. We've got a lot of holes in our zone. So yeah. I was happy to see that, Alabama State did not take advantage of that too much. Their quarterback was like, look once at your guy and then run, which prepping for a team like Penn State, I think that's probably a beneficial type player to go up against. Sean Clifford does a lot of that too. So, as far as getting pressure, I don't know if we were trying that hard.
That's true too.
But I definitely expected a little bit more. So.
Yeah. And that's maybe just, I'm hoping, because that was a struggle the last few years, that we get guys into the backfield. Now, I think where we are getting into the backfield isn't resulting in sacks, but a lot of tackle for losses. I mean, I think 1, 2, 3, like pretty much the top 9 tacklers for Auburn end up getting a tackle for loss. So that's showing you we're getting into the backfield. It may not result in a sack, but we tackle the running back in the backfield and results in negative yardage. It's, not as flashy as a sack, but it's still negative yardage, makes it really tough on the offense. So we're getting there. It's just, I want to see it more, I guess, towards the quarterback, focus on that.
For sure. And I want to see some more blitz packages too.
Yes.
I think we're probably hiding some of those right now.
We probably are. Yeah.
Really, because we haven't needed them.
Yeah. So, one time, I think Smoke was on a safety blitz, though he jumped it a little too early. I've seen that one. I know we've done one or a handful of like linebacker blitzes, like where we have Owen Papo or Jacoby McLean kind of go in there, but it's not. I don't know. Those haven't necessarily resulted in a lot of good plays yet. Maybe we're hiding the best for other teams, and that wouldn't honestly shock me. That we're just kind of, it's a vanilla defense right now, not showing a whole lot.
For sure.
I do want to talk about some of the big tacklers this game. I mean, Jacoby McLean, this was his 8th career 10+ tackle game. The dude is a beast. Like, he just finds tackle. I mean, it felt like at some points it was like back-to-back plays that Jacoby was in on the tackle, getting a solo tackle or like helping out a guy. And you're just thinking, this dude, no wonder he was, the leading tackler last year in the SEC. He just knows how to find the ball, does not care about anything besides just getting to the ball. And he does a really good job of that. Got some tackle for losses. Like, he's amazing. Maybe I'm having a little man crush over him, but like, dude, he's amazing.
You'll have to have him on sometime.
I know, right? Another one that I definitely want to shout out, and been dating back to when we started like our Carlton Davis watch, like we've done defensive back watches. Roger McCreary has become that guy for me. So I'm going to start a new segment specifically for Roger McCreary this year. He has been our go-to lockdown corner, and for his last year, he's putting up some really good stats. He's already got a pass breakup. Dude had a freaking pick 6 this game. And I think he ran the route better than the wide receiver did on that pick 6. Like, he saw it and he was like, oh, perfect to me. Great. I'm going to run it in.
Yeah.
I love it. Any other thoughts about Roger McCreary?
Gosh, it's great to have really some lockdown corners. And when we come into some of these teams that they already have a well-defined playmaker at wide receiver, I really want to see him one-on-one on some of those guys. So I'm really happy to have him there. Was loving the interception, pick 6. I mean, anytime you can get that on defense, it's exciting. And then, the ability to really defend the pass, which we've never been great at, but have been good at. Was pretty exciting.
Good enough. Like, I mean, for goodness sakes, we've got like Carlton Davis and
but
Jamel Dean, and
we had 2 corners that won a Super Bowl last year. So I'm not going to say like we're not good at it, but we've never been great. But I feel like we're getting closer, which is cool.
And I was just thinking of, I mean, we've really been developing into kind of this cornerback university where we've put some great guys into the NFL. I think we're not, top level, but we're we're putting out some good product as far as secondary. I mean, I'm really excited to see a lot of these guys kind of transition, especially, under Kevin Steele's defense to this Derek Mason defense. And then, going forward into the NFL, because I think there's going to be some really good talent like Roger McCreary and Smoke Monday that are going to make some big impacts on Sunday in the NFL.
Absolutely. I mean, even Igbenogany, I saw him play. He's somewhere in the NFL. I heard his name called out.
Dolphins? Is that accurate? I'm going to look him up.
I'm not sure. I'd have to look.
Igbenogany. Yeah, Dolphins.
But yeah, I think preseason he was making some plays, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny to be kind of RBU and DBU at the same time.
That's pretty cool.
So yeah, Kevin Steele, he did some great things, but I'm not going to mention his name ever again after this. So I'm happy with Derek Mason and kind of the team that he's inherited, and hope that the recruiting trail continues to go well and get better on the defensive side.
Yeah, no doubt. I did want to talk about the strip fumble. So Marquise Burks ended up stripping it. Coley Wooden ends up coming up with the ball. I'm loving our defense and our turnovers. How that was something I feel like every once in a while under a Kevin Steele defense we got, but it's starting to, continue to be, we're going to get turnovers. We're going to make the offense mess up. And I personally love that. I think that's a great way to just go after the ball. So I'm really excited about that. Really hoping we continue against better competition, causing turnovers.
Absolutely. And I think that's a Harsin thing. I feel like under the Gus era, he was all about ball protection, but Harsin's all about like offensively going after getting turnovers.
Yeah.
And I like that, where you take it not to be a defensive minded, but on a defensive side, offensively minded.
Yep.
I love attacking the ball and attacking, the turnover, and forcing these things has been great the first couple games.
Yeah, it really has been. And I think that kind of bleeds over sometimes even into special teams. Like when the defense is feeling good, that's when we get some good vibes about, all right, cool. Like, I mean, that's, I think one of the reasons we got, punt block and a kick block this game.
Yeah.
So I think the sky's the limit for this defense. And then I continue. I mean, my expectation is they're going to be a top 10 defense by the end of this year, regardless of the competition that we have.
Number one right now.
That good. Exactly.
Number one right now.
Let's talk about special teams. Anders Carlson did, honestly pretty good. I mean, he was 1 for 1, I believe, for kicks. He had a 34-yarder, and then all of his kicks pretty much went through the end zone. Even the one, I think one of the penalties pushed us back to the 30-yard line, so it was an extra like 5 yards. Anders didn't care. He still kicked it in the end zone, no return. So I think our kickoff game is very strong. And Anders obviously is one of our strengths of our special teams, doing well again.
Yep.
I did want to mention a player that I didn't really know too much about, but I saw that he carried out the American flag. So, the new tradition, you have two guys carrying a War Damn Eagle or WDE kind of flag, and the other carrying the American flag out of the tunnel, before the game starts. And Barton Lester was the guy holding the American flag this game. And I was before the game, I was like, who is Barton Lester? And who's number 51? And he's a senior. He has played on this team for a long time, and he's developed into a very good special teams player. And by very good, this dude had a blocked punt. He had a kickoff that he got a tackle on. And on top of that, he almost had another blocked punt, like was inches away from almost getting another blocked punt. Yeah. This dude was just doing things. And for a guy that I didn't know too much about going into this, super happy to see guys like that performing so well and just having eyes on the prize of doing really good job in whatever, whatever capacity that the coach puts you in. And Barton Lester was definitely doing that.
Yeah, I don't know if our special teams is just that dang good or if Alabama State's is just really bad. But I feel like every single punt, we could have blocked it. We just stopped trying.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
we didn't want to rub it in. But man,
that would have been pretty embarrassing if every punt was blocked. That would have been really was Alabama State.
The blocked punt that we did have where Barton Lester got that bad boy, that was so cool.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've seen a block punt in Jordan Hare Stadium, so I was happy to see that.
Yeah, definitely. We also, that blocked field goal, that one was also a lot of fun. That was blocked by I think it was Wooden, and then returned by Nehemiah Pritchett. So, I mean, goodness, like, I love special teams. They create some really fun, really fun plays. And this game was full of special teams, really good plays. I also want to talk about the return game. So it looked like Demetrius Robinson was kind of our main one out there for punt return. I think we tried out Devin Geis. I think he fumbled it once, maybe twice or something like that. Not great. Especially when I feel like punt return, like, just clean it, filled it cleanly. And, anything on top of that, that's kind of what I'm hoping for. But if you can't field it cleanly, you're not going to get a big return. So I honestly look, especially in this next game, for Demetrius Robinson to kind of be the main guy punt returning. And I mean, dude has some speed. We haven't even really talked about his speed, but I'm seeing, the word flashes, like Anthony Schwartz, like the Flash. I mean it. Like, this dude is quick. I mean, we think we had a end around, like, reverse play with Demetrius Robinson in this game. He had a great punt return. He's got a lot of speed, and I think that's really exciting for this team to have a guy like him with senior leadership on the team, coming in from Georgia, playing his final year in college. He's making some big things happen, and I'm really excited to have him.
Yeah, and it's really kind of incredible how quickly he's kind of come in to playing with this team, because he's probably the player with the least time on campus.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he came in only a couple weeks prior to. He came in like in the middle of fall practice or something like that, right?
3 weeks or 4 weeks before the first game. I mean, it really wasn't much time. Like, there was even a point where, like, Bo was like, I didn't even get one. I haven't even passed to Demetrius Robinson in practice or anything. And you're thinking, wow, like, that kind of shows you how new Demetrius Robertson is to Bo Nix. But that chemistry has already started to build quickly with Demetrius and Bo. And I think that's a good thing going forward.
And he's talented. So happy to have him on the team.
Yeah, definitely. The other kind of one that I wanted to talk about with special teams was obviously that kickoff that Alabama State had that was perfectly executed. Okay, bad special teams. But I did want to talk about, and this harkens back to, Ben, when we were doing the podcast together on a regular basis. Do you remember Australian Aaron?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Australian Aaron. I saw him play today.
Yeah, he was playing for the Eagles. How cool was that?
It was awesome.
Good to see him. Like, I think he shocked most people in, leaving early, but he was also like 26 or 27, I think.
I feel like he's 28.
Old.
He came over to college from Australia after already going through all of their schooling. So he had eligibility, but I was still happy to see him go. And he had a great punt today for the Eagles. I don't know if you watched the game or not, but one of my Sunday traditions is watching the Atlanta Falcons fall apart. So
sad. So sad to be an Atlanta native, but it's part of it.
So yeah, it was good to see Australian Aaron back again.
Yeah, it was cool to see Aaron Sipos get back out there and actually do well. And he's a starting punter for the Eagles, so he's made his way onto a roster. And congrats to him. Ben, any other final thoughts before we get out of here? And then we'll do our Penn State review a little bit later in the week. Any other thoughts on this Alabama State game?
Yeah. So, look, fantastic performance on kind of every facet of the game, especially in the second half. Just absolutely loved the adjustments that were made. And I feel like this team has a lot of momentum going into the rest of the season. I feel like they've been able to kind of use these first two games as really test pilots of what we can do and what we can perform. And I know we've held a lot of stuff back. And so I'm really excited. Had very small expectations for this team. If you had told me pre-season that we'd come out and put up 60 plus on our first two opponents, I would have been like, there's absolutely no way that's happening.
That is crazy.
And the fact that we're beating teams 61-5 right now on average is incredible.
Yeah, that's some dominance, and I love putting teams like that in their place because it helps Auburn personally. But I feel like, yeah, maybe I feel a little bad for those smaller teams, but
no, they got their money.
They got their money. And hey, Auburn's not afraid to play in-state rivals, in-state teams like Alabama State. Other than Alabama, they're super scared of playing teams like that apparently. But
they got to play teams like Duke.
That's bad.
And Mercer.
Yeah, those are bad teams.
Powerhouses.
Ben, before we get out of here, how can the people stay in touch with you?
Yeah, you guys can find me anywhere on social media at BENK1NG. And also do a podcast with my friend CJ Sweat called Moneyline. You can find that anywhere where podcasts exist.
Yeah, and if you can find me on Twitter at AJAY _. It's always great to be an Auburn Tiger and War Eagle.
War Eagle.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.